Thank you for joining us tonight, and I want to welcome you to Korean Cultural Society of Boston's 6th Annual Korean Heritage Symposium. My name is Gina Kwok. I'm the Vice President of the Society, and I will be moderating this evening. I also want to thank the Overseas Koreans Agency and the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in Boston for their sponsorship and their support. You are joining us now for our third session in a 4-week series where we have been learning about Korean culture and Korean art. Our topic today is the Korean moon jar, which we know has been considered to be a national treasure of Korea. And to speak with us about that today, we welcome Dr. Do-Hoon Kim. Dr. Kim is a second-generation successor of renowned Korean master artist Seong Kim. He has a doctorate in ceramic materials engineering. He is a curator or has curated and directed in international symposiums and has also been engaged in integration of 3D printing technology with ceramics. He's been showcased in the documentary From Earth to Light, and he has also been featured in the video introduction of Korean pottery at the Korean Cultural Center in LA and in New York. Currently, he has established a Korean pottery gallery in Andover, Massachusetts called Atelier Terre. We're thankful that Dr. Kim has joined us tonight. So now, without any further ado, we warmly welcome Dr. Kim.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Dong Kim. Today, we look at this beautiful ceramic called the moon jar. It is very poetic and romantic name. But did you know the potter of the Joseon Dynasty never called it moon? The moon jar is the romantic nickname made by modern art critics. To the actual potters who made it, its official name was simply 백자대호, which literally means a large white jar. To them, it was not a romantic poem. It was cold and hard reality and massive engineering missions. I grew up as the son of a potter. What I saw at the kiln as a child were not these beautiful jars, but these pieces of failures, like parts that collapsed and broke. Curious about these physical limits, I became a material engineer who looked at the clay at the molecular levels, and also a ceramic sculptor who makes foam with my hands. So when I look at the large white jar through these views, it is just a perfect piece of art. So I want to start with this question today. If I were a potter in Joseon Dynasty, how did I make these huge, unstable jar? To understand this jar, we must look at the world. The history of the ceramic travels with human history. Techniques move from Islam world to China, from China to Korea, then to Japan, and finally to Europe. In the 17th and 18th centuries, making pure white porcelain was the ultimate high-tech global trend led by China. The Joseon royal court ordered potters to follow this trend and make massive vessel over 40 centimeters for royal banquets. But after 2 terrible wars, Joseon was totally broke. They could not afford too expensive blue cobalt pigment from the China to decorate them. Unable to use paintings, the potters had to impress the king using only the overwhelming volumes and the pure white color of the local clay. But this local clay was an engineering nightmare. Before we look at how they did it, we must remember one thing. This engineering mindset was not new. It was in their blood. Centuries earlier, their ancestors used endless trial and errors to perfect the legendary green color of the Korea celadon. They didn't have blueprints or even microscopes. They observed the collapsed jars and learned from the fire and built a massive database of the physical experimental over the generations. When the dynasty changed and the king demanded massive white porcelain, the potters simply applied this inherited, much more difficult materials. They were the ultimate empirical engineers. Now we look at their first struggle with this new material, the clay. If I were a Joseon potter, my biggest enemy would be the clay. To make Joseon white porcelain, potters had to find primary clay, mostly called kaolin, deep into the mountain. But this good white clay was not just lying there perfectly. The potter had to walk through the logged mountains and find rocks and crush them with a hammer and check the inside. Sometimes they might even touch the crushed rock to their tongue to feel how sticky it was. But wait, what's the difference? Why not just use the clay from the Korea celadon? This was a very good question. Celadon was made from secondary clay. This clay was carried by river, mixed with many other minerals, and very incredibly sticky and plastic. It was easy to form and could support its own weight. It was perfect for the refined, elegant shade of the celadon. But it had too much iron, which made it green. To make pure white porcelain, they needed primary clay, which had almost zero iron. But primary clay is the materials engineering nightmare. This clay has almost no plasticity. It simply won't hold together. Try to shape it, and it crumbles. The pure white kaolin is the prize for its color, but it comes with a serious challenge. They had to purify the rock dust. They used a brilliant process called subi, the purification. They mixed the rock dust with a huge amount of water, using the simple difference in specific gravity. They let the heavy iron sand naturally sink down to the bottom. Then they kept kaolin floating on the top. Through this hard physical work, they finally got perfectly pure white clay. And even after mixing the clays, the plasticity was still very low. To maximize it, they used their bodies. This is the 흙밟기, called clay stepping. They stepped on this mixed clay with their bare feet. By pressing it with their full body weight, they forced to microparticle to bond and pushing the limited plasticity to its absolute maximum just to make the clay survive the spinning wheel. So this video shows the washing of the celadon clay by feet.
도자기의 원료는 잘 수비된 흙을 5년 이상 숙성시킨 것으로 테토라 부른다. 적당한 분량의 테토를 아버지와 내가 무슨 놀이라도 하듯 빙글빙글 돌면서 꾹꾹 눌러밟기 시작한다. 이것은 흙덩이의 공기를 빼고 밀도를 높여 보다 찰지게 하기 위함으로 도자기의 모양을 만드는 성형 단계에 들어가기 전 반드시 해야 하는 일이다. 도자기 제작 공정이 기계화된 현대에서는 이렇게 힘이 많이 들어가는 일은 대부분 기계의 도움을 받는다.
So Even after Hukbati, this compromised clay was still too weak to pull up on spinning wheel all at once, a height of 40 centimeters. It would sink under its own weight. So look at close at the center of these 3D images. Do you see this horizontal line? The most realistic and wise solution was called updaji, upper-lower joint technique method. They made the top half and the bottom half separately. Then they flipped the top half and attached it to the bottom half. This is not a lack of the skill. It is the optimal engineering design. It was their brilliant survival strategy to make massive vessels using their stubborn local clay. Because of this joining process, the moon jar is slightly asymmetrical. Its shoulders sink, and it is never perfect circle. The heavy weight of the top half naturally shifts the shape during drying and firing. This asymmetry is a fierce trace of the structural resistance. The technique shown here is to form the moon jar by throwing the top half and bottom half separately and then joining them together. So if the clay body has excellent plasticity and the vessel size is small enough, you can throw the entire form in a single flow, like this.
Picture yourself on a boat in the distance, a river of glass, the sun's steady glow. Somebody calls and you look up to see it, a girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Lucy in the sky with diamonds, Lucy in the sky with diamonds.
Now, after the massive jar was successfully joined, it was still extremely fragile. It had to be dried very slowly to prevent the seams from cracking, carefully trimmed, and then fired once at a lower temperature. This first firing, called bisque firing, hardened the clay just enough so it wouldn't dissolve and collapse when soaked into the liquid glaze. And now it was time for the glazing. Using limestone was a technique from the China, but they couldn't just copy of the Chinese recipe because Korean clay had a different chemistry and even limestone had a different chemistry too. If the glaze didn't perfectly match the local clay, it would peel off or shatter. How did it find the perfect match without modern chemistry? Maybe through relentless trial and errors. They crushed local limestones and mixed it with different ashes and painted on 1,000 of test shards and fired them again and again. Now, the unsaleable clay jar covered with this hard-on clay glaze enters the Joseon wood fire kiln, a deep fire over 1,300 degrees Celsius. In this extreme fire, the clay shrinks massively. The heavy top presses down hard on the weak center joint. At this moment, the local limestone glaze does its job. In the intense heat, the glaze melts and tightly wraps the surface. We call this vitrification. Just before the jar collapses, this vitrification grips the surface and locks the structure in place. Ultimately, the fire was the final judge. So this video shows the wood fire kiln process in my father's kiln in Korea. Probably the Joseon potters fired their kiln in much the same way.
봉통에 시부를 당긴 것으로부터 가마의 불때기는 시작된다. 도자기는 도공이 만든 것이 아니라 불이 탄생시키는 것이라고 하지 않던가. 나는 몇 시간째 꼼짝도 않고 봉통의 불을 지켜본다. 불꽃의 모양과 색깔을 관찰하며 칸불을 언제 넣어야 할지, 불의 세기와 온도는 어떤지 나름대로 가늠해보는 것이다. 땔감은 주로 소나무를 사용한다. 장작은 먼지와 잡티를 털어내기 위해 힘있게 탁탁 두드린 후 가지런히 넣어야 한다. 봉통에 불이 거세지면서 열기가 빨려 들어간 것이 보인다. 환호는 불의 기운이 가마를 빈틈없이 채워야만 가능하므로 불의 흐름과 세기에 잠시도 정신을 놓으면 안 된다.
Now the fire is out, and we finally look at the surviving jar up close. So if you look very closely, you can see tiny cracks from the extreme heat. You can see the subtle grayish white tint from the iron-rich clay they had to use. You can see the asymmetrical, drooping shoulders. But if I were a Joseon potter, I would never call this mistake. These are marks of survival. The jar endured its own weight, the lack of materials, and the destructive 1,300-degree heat to the very end. The ceramics travel to the wall, but they are always made of their local clay and materials. The moon jar is the result of the Joseon potters desperately trying to achieve a global standard using a very difficult, uncooperative. My conclusion as an engineer and a potter is clear. Yes, the moon jar is beautifully relaxed and aesthetic. But it's true, profound beauty runs much deeper than the perfect geometry. It moves us because it is the physical proof of the immense human research and effort. It fought against all imperfect conditions like weak clay, economic hardship, and a fierce fire, and ultimately survive. So when I look at a large white jar, I hear this message. It's okay to wave a little. It's okay to be a little imperfect. To survive with collapsing, that is true beauty. All right, thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to ask me anything.
Dr. Kim, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. I really, your words are beautiful, actually, and it gives me a much different appreciation for what we see as the simplistic beauty, just how complex and how challenging it is to achieve that. And yet, your words are really, they're inspiring. While we're looking and waiting for some questions, giving people time to think about it, I actually wonder, so it's just such a process, and I understand how difficult it was to find that clay. Modern times, today, when people make these moon jars, do they still use now local modern clay? I mean, are they no longer dealing with the same challenges now because now they use different clay, or do they still use the same technique, or is it how is it changed now when they make moon jars?
So normally now the potters can buy the white porcelain clay easily by supply chain. The supply chains can make a very plastic the white porcelain clay. So actually you don't need it to make the two separate bottom and top half. But the sizes matter. If some potters cannot make a big size, they can use still the up.
We have a question in the chat. Do you use any tool to shape the clay in the wheel into a jar or for the half jar, or do you just use your hand?
Oh, it depends on the shape. If I make a very simple shape, I'm still using the tools, wooden tools we call the hera. And if I make a single pulling the round one, I'm just using my hands.
Standard size for these jars, or are they made larger or smaller depending on what their use was?
Yes, it depends on what they want uses. But probably the Joseon Dynasty kingdom, they wanted to make a big vessel, big white jar over the 40 centimeters more for put some, I think the alcohol or some waters inside, put some inside. So they wanted it to large, big jars. The banquet needs a lot of alcohols, the waters, sometimes put something stuff to the inside. So they need big jars.
Another question we've got, how long does it take to complete the jar you showed from start to finish?
Almost at least 1 month more from starting from the clay to firing. That's the only single processing. But the kiln is a little problem because the kiln is very huge. So if I run the kiln, I need 100 pieces more. So I needed time to making 100 pieces. So I think probably took at least 2-3 months.
We've got a comment or question. I love the idea that true beauty comes from imperfection and perseverance. The way you connected it to human effort and local materials was both poetic and powerful. It made the whole piece feel very meaningful. I agree. I agree. And we have another question. How often does even an experienced potter still destroy some in the process of making these jars? And is there a reason why the bottom half appears more narrow than the top?
The first question, how often does an even experienced potter still destroy some in the process of the making jars? It depends on the potter. And then I think this habits came from the Goryeo dynasty. The Goryeo dynasty potters destroyed their failure pieces, sometimes wonderful, excellent pieces, because the Goryeo dynasty potters worked in the kingdom's pottery studio only for the kingdom. So they couldn't give to the kingdom their failure ones or not good one. So they destroyed their low quality celadons, sometimes very high quality the celadons, because of they could not make the high quality celadons anymore, just only once, just in coincidence. So when they gave to the kingdom the very excellent one, the kingdom wanted to keep the excellent celadon to them. So they destroyed their the beautiful, excellent one. But the Joseon dynasty is a little different from the Goryeo dynasty. Joseon's potters still working with the kingdom, the pottery studio, but normally many other the peoples living in the outside of the kingdom, they could use the white porcelain also. So maybe they didn't destroy their white porcelain. And then the second question, is there a reason why the bottom half appears more narrow than the top? It's almost same as constructed like a building. The bottom side, the thickness is a little bit more thicker than the top, because the top half is a little bit heavier than the lower top. So they make the little thick the foot of the bottom half. So they looks like a little bit thin, but the thickness is more thicker than the top.
You another question. What is your favorite moon jar? Who made it and from what period is it from?
Actually, I couldn't say what is my favorite moon jar because every moon jar told me different words to me. But when I went to the National Museum in Korea, the one piece, the starting my presentation folder, same as that pieces give me a little piece for me.
Let's see, is modern moon jar made from a different mix or glaze? And if so, what are the differences? Are they made with different materials or glaze or even maybe processes?
All different.
All
Different. Yeah. The ceramics depends on their environment, their period time. Because we couldn't get same clay like that Joseon Dynasty because environment changed, the climate changed, everything changed. So we could not get the same material that period. So we needed to change the method, or sometimes needed to change the materials also.
There's one more. Yes, it's
Yes.
even if everyone is different, how long would it take for a total beginner to begin to try to even make a moon jar?
There was a very, very difficult questions. Even the porters cannot make the moon jar directly. Many porters cannot make it the moon jar because the size is big and the shape is the top the top of the moon jar is very small. So that's the problem. So many porters cannot make the moon jar not easily, but if somebody want to make it, probably take 1 year more.
I saw the documentary, actually, a little bit of the clip with you and your father, and I
Mhm.
wondered, when did you start working with your father in that way? Were you very
Um,
young? Have you done this for many, 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 many years, or is it something you came to as you got a little older and became more interested in it?
in fact, I was born in my father's studio.
Mm.
So my father's studio was my playground, but I never learned from my father directly. I just look at behind his shoulder. And then also when I went to the university, I changed my major to the sculpture because of the Salvador. So when I came back from the school, I started to learn from my father exactly 20 years ago.
Wow. Oh, and then there's a few more here. Thank you. What is the largest moon jar you have constructed?
Oh, over 40 centimeters more, almost 50 centimeters. Because every the ceramics shrinks after firing, almost starting from clay to fire, almost 20% more. So when I make the 50 centimeters moon jar, the original clay size is almost 65 or 70 centimeters.
Wow. And then we've got a comment. The earth changes the material of the moon jar, like the sky changes around the moon as time goes on. I think I hadn't appreciated how large they were because you gave us your dimensions, but I think when you see it, and we see them behind you, um, because of the circumference of it, they have a really huge presence to them. And I feel like that really gives an impact to the viewer when they see them. You can really appreciate how difficult and challenging that is to construct.
Yeah, there's a very huge celadons there. There's almost 1 meter more. There's the largest celadon in the world in Korea.
Wow.
Took 1 year more.
Wow. I have another question that's not on there, but people have been talking about a resurgence of moon jar appreciation in Korea. Do you do you have any ideas on why or what is so appealing right now in Korea about the moon jar, the resurgence of it right now?
I think the people love the simplest.
Hmm.
A lot of designs and the colors. There's a lot of colors and the detailed shapes is there, but the moon jar is the simple colors and simple and shape and simple and the asymmetry They honor the formal shape. Looks like people's life. People wanted to go straight, but the life not allowed.
These days, many people outside Korea are also making so-called moon jars. What do you think about that? Sometimes some of them don't even look like the traditional moon jars. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm really proud of this trend of the moon jar in the world. But the moon jar is kind of the shape. Every porters can make the large jars looks like a moon jar, and they called moon jars. And here's the one thing: the Korean and East Asian method of the making the moon jar style is a little different from the outside of the country. So many people outside of Korea, they wanted to learn about the the Korean style making the moon jar. Yeah, sometimes some of them don't even look like a traditional moon jar. Yeah, the pottery things made by the human. So if somebody can make a moon jar, the shape is all different. This looks like a people's face, looks like face different.
Thank you. There's another one here. Do moon jars ideally need to be made only of Korean clay? Would that be the ideal in making a moon jar?
It depends on the color because the traditional the moon jar that they made a Joseon period, the moon jars the color a little bit sometimes grayish, sometimes a little bit ivory because that depends on the clay and glaze and firing time. So your questions needed to be made only Korean clay? No. You can make any clay with in the wall, but the shape it only looks like a moon jar.
Yes, do we have any final questions? I know we've been shooting them at you, Dr. Kim, nonstop. I will just maybe take, if anyone else has anything else, this is your chance. I just really appreciate the way you did this presentation. I have such a deeper appreciation for the moon jar and the way it speaks to life. And I love how you made that comparison over and over again and the uniqueness of it, how it's very different, just like our faces are different. I think it's a very poetic and very meaningful way to appreciate this art. So I really enjoyed listening to you tonight. I think a lot of us did as we had all these questions to engage. I want to thank you, Dr. Kim, for taking the time to join us and put this presentation on for us. And for everyone else who joined us, I want to thank you for your participation and thank you for your interest. Thank you, everyone. Good night.